Welcome everyone to the Vandy and Public Sector Alumni Panel. Really grateful to have you here. We have two wonderful panelists with us today. I'm afraid our third panelist, Sarah Mansouri, unfortunately could not make it last minute due to a work obligation, but we have two incredible Vanderbilt alumni here to speak with you. And to get us started, I just wanted to ask you two to introduce yourself, just tell us your name, your current position, the organization you work for, as well as your class year and class major. And if you can't remember everything I just said, just feel free to let me know. But yeah, Victoria, would you like to go first?
Of course. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here to get to talk to you all, and I hope to get some really great questions from you all. I'm Victoria Payne. I'm the Vice President of Metro Policy at the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce. So a Chamber of Commerce is a conglomeration of a bunch of businesses that get together, and this is we cover about a 14 county region for the Chamber, so all the businesses in that area. I graduated from Vandy in 2014 and studied political science and Japanese language and culture.
Hi everyone. It's great to meet everyone. My name is Daria Burstel, and I graduated from Vanderbilt in 2018. I double majored in political science and women's and gender studies. I'm currently a professional staff member in the U.S. House of Representatives, specifically on the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure on the Democratic staff.
Great, thank you so much. So to start off, we just heard what your position titles entail. What your position titles are, but something I've noticed is position titles are almost arbitrary, and I don't really understand what a position is just based on the name of it. So if you wouldn't mind just telling us, what does your position entail? What does a week in the life look like? And we could just for ease, are you comfortable with just going like Victoria and Daria and just keep rolling with that?
Sure. So I would say a straightforward job that I have is I am the Metro lobbyist for the Chamber of Commerce. So I lobby on behalf of the generic general business community at the Metro and the city level. So that is building relationships with the mayor's office, the Metro Council, Metro departments, and kind of helping overall business topics that kind of range from economic development to affordable housing to transportation, kind of anything that plays a piece in what affects the business community as a whole. And we're thinking beyond just economics. We're thinking quality of life, what keeps businesses here, what brings business here, and kind of making sure that there's a business-friendly environment. And so it is a lot of, I think this week itself, I'm working on an affordable housing bill at the Metro Council, helping some businesses on my end understand what's going on with that. So kind of being that line of communication between business and the elected officials. I'm working on a revamp of the music council at the mayor's office, which is something that's kind of interesting. Working around, I'm sure you guys have saw last week, there were some bills around the regulation of those party buses and pedal taverns. We were playing a piece in that, and I know that's kind of an interesting topic, but I think every day it's really being that line of communication, help to businesses, helping them understand that red tape around bureaucracy that exists at the local level, specifically for me. And just also bringing the business voice to elected leadership, helping them to understand why the business community thinks one way, what their impact is on the business community, and just kind of being that open line of communication.
So my title is technically a professional staff member, which is a title that makes no sense outside of Congress. It doesn't really mean anything, but on congressional committees, it does mean something very specific just because of the way our rules are in. So professional staff it's only in committees, it's not in personal offices, like member offices. And it basically just means the mid-level policy staff, just general policy staff. and there are a couple different other ones, but that's kind of the bulk of the staff on a congressional committee will be called professional staff. So I work on transportation and infrastructure, known as TNI, and specifically on our investigations and oversight team. So I am primarily concerned with oversight of the things that are in our jurisdiction. So congressional committees, they have a bunch of different responsibilities, and one of them is oversight of their jurisdiction. So for transportation and infrastructure, it's all the different modes of transportation, and lots of different infrastructure things like pipelines and things like that. So doing oversight, it's a lot of some of it's long-term investigations. A lot of other times it's looking into things. So we oversee FAA and the Department of Transportation. So it day to day things can vary a lot, but a lot of it is meeting with government officials, talking to them about what they're doing, how they're implementing laws that we've passed. So we'll, especially when things go wrong, the committee will end up passing legislation to fix it. And then over the next few years, we and beyond will oversee how they're implementing that law. So day to day, it can be really different, but there's a lot of reading, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of talking to people, a lot of talking to government officials, along with staff from other congressional offices, and talking to a lot of stakeholders, because obviously there's a lot of private industry in transportation and infrastructure. So it's a lot of talking to people, and it's a lot of research. And especially we have a lot of long-term projects, but also just reacting to stuff when things happen. Even things like the Pedal Tavern. We all sent that around when that article came out, and like, do we want to do something about this? I don't know. Is it in our jurisdiction? We were like, it moves. So that's how we usually define transportation. But so we aren't. But there's always new topics. There's always new things that are coming up, especially with a jurisdiction as wide as all of transportation and infrastructure.
Oh, that's really cool. And I'm grateful both of you who have spent time in Nashville, the real educated people on Pedal Taverns, are getting to the bottom of this. So that's fantastic. Glad to hear. And so now this next question is a two-parter. I want to ask, what would you say is like your favorite part of your job and your least favorite part of your job?
Okay, I would say my favorite part is probably the fact that I think Daria and I can both agree that a lot of our jobs require the establishment of relationships. And so to be able to kind of build that trust among partners, to build that trust among elected leadership, to build those relationships and kind of use those relationships in a positive way for both organizations and both individuals. I think that ability and the fact that that is kind of the core of at least my every day to day is probably the best part of it. There is such a value in creating a relationship with, say, a Metro Council member in a certain district where he or she may be sponsoring a bill that we don't necessarily agree on or we disagree on, but we can disagree on this one thing, but because we have kind of this core relationship, we respect each other enough that we will be able to work on another topic together and be partners in that down the line. And I think that's probably one of the best parts of the job. The worst parts of the job, I think, would be the diving into a lot of Metro codes and figuring out a lot of the technical aspects of it. I would say I didn't go into this job having the best knowledge of affordable housing codes or transportation specific items, and then a lot of those little bitty things. So diving into that, but then it was a real learning experience, I would say, especially the last few years, where I originally was hired as focused purely on transit, and then kind of progressing and growing in these various topics and areas and just kind of gaining knowledge in them. I think it was a hard learning curve, but it was achievable in the end. And then I would just say another rough thing occasionally is when you do have to there are many conflicting voices in a room when you're looking at a piece of legislation or you're looking at a particular topic or issue, and being able to not be able to make everyone happy in the end and knowing there is going to be a loser in this situation. I think that's a hard part to kind of deal with.
I think my favorite part is probably just getting to work on just a really wide variety of things. If there's one thing that is kind of boring or not that interesting, there's always going to be something else, something new to learn about. So there's never really gets stale, which I think is one of the best parts, because you always get to learn about something new, dive into a new issue or project, and getting to work with lots of different people and build those relationships, as Victoria said, is a really interesting part of the job. I think probably the worst part of the job is more just things are time sensitive, and so like if something comes up and you need to deal with it, like you need to deal with it. It doesn't matter what time it is or what your other plans were, whether it's 8 p.m. on a Friday or Saturday or Sunday. On the flip side is that there usually is a fair amount of flexibility with the rest of your time. We have recess days and people are very understanding, so you can get kind of flexibility in the rest of your life. But if something has happened and you need to deal with it, like you need to deal with it. So that can be it can be hard to schedule around big things.
Definitely. Makes sense. Appreciate you both sharing there. Always appreciate the transparency with questions like that. And another question that I'm going to invite some transparency with is, so I know you both studied political science. Daria, I believe you said you had a dual major with women and gender studies as well. I was curious, how do you see your undergraduate studies in like your academic program contributing to your work, or how do you think it prepared you for your work or has helped you in your career, anything like that?
One clear part that I think the political science degree and kind of my overall experience at Vanderbilt helped with was, in political science, I think you're given many opportunities and exercises and practices of critical thinking and taking a very, very tough situation, whether that's in one of your international relations classes or your political theory classes, and having to find some kind of a mutual solution out of that. The way you process looking at all sides, considering the deep impacts of even the tiniest things, your unintended consequences or implications that come out of making decisions, and figuring out what is the best for the right parties in the situation. I think there were a lot of exercises through my degree and a lot of different projects and conversations we had through political science courses that kind of helped mentally prepare me for the toughness of that and what that kind of looks like. I'll say that as weird as it is, a lot of the political theory conversations and the things you learn are actually kind of helpful as you're thinking through why certain decisions have to be made, why certain actors play the way that they do, and the kind of powers of influence that has to happen to make kind of things come to fruition. And so a lot of those things, and just the way that you think through even these smaller problems in your classes, you're able to take those exact concepts and make them into a bigger impact. So I'm looking at, okay, this one problem is going to impact the entire county, but I can think about it in those examples that we had in class where, yes, we were only thinking theoretically, we were only thinking small term, but the thought process is still the same. So I think that kind of critical thinking piece of those classes and being able to be in a class with so many diverse students and so many diverse frames of thought and mind was incredibly helpful when dealing with 40 really crazy council members.
So I double majored with political science, women's and gender studies, and I think in a lot of ways my WGS degree is actually more helpful in my job. I mean, one of the main ideas, in women's and gender studies is that the personal is political, which I think is something that comes back around constantly in policy, and thinking about policy and how it impacts individual people and how it all connects, I think was one of the most helpful things for understanding just kind of the scope of what I'm working on now and just for how it all relates to each other. I think my political science degree was especially helpful for just reading a lot and writing a lot. Something that was kind of annoying to learn. I mean, people tell you over and over again, like, you need to be a really good writer when you work in politics. And it's a little bit of a tough pill to swallow when that's really true. So everything whether, in any liberal arts degree where you kind of have to do a lot of reading, you have to do a lot of writing, figuring out how to present your ideas concisely, is always going to be really helpful. So I think that was among the best things I learned. And yeah, and just especially being in class with lots of different types of people and getting into some interesting discussions, especially in political science, was definitely great. But just any liberal arts degree, especially when you're really trying to think about people and how things interact and how everything's connected, I think is one of the most important things I learned.
No, that's a fantastic answer and a great segue into my next question too. So we heard mentions of things like reading skills are important, writing skills, being able to present your ideas coherently and concisely. Are there any other skills that you think are really important in your job that students could start working on in the meantime?
Oh yeah, I second everything Daria just said on being able to read things quickly, being able to decipher things quickly. Usually, at least in my work, you get a very short amount of time as you're walking from one place to another to talk about the pros, cons, and why you should be doing whatever choice you're trying to advocate for. I think that's being able to not only write, but quickly speak your the information you need to give quickly is very, very valuable. You're going to be taking in a lot of information. And so being able to do your research very fast and be able to clean out what is true, what is false, what is slightly exaggerated is extremely important. And I would think it's really getting your ability to do and feel comfortable with researching different things. I think that no matter what position you're in policy, you're going to be constantly doing research, looking up information, being able to prove your stance. I think those are really important skills to have. And then honestly, just being able to, even I have a problem with this sometimes, being able to verbally and clearly state your position, I think in a very sweet and concise way, because I think most of the politicians that we're talking to, or the business CEOs or whoever, that you have less than 5 minutes to get your point across. So being quick and concise.
Yeah, I would definitely second all of that. Just being able to take in information quickly and understand it and then present it to someone else is definitely among the most important. Because a lot of my job, a lot of similar roles have a lot of presenting information to members of Congress, to other staff, and convincing them of your point. And people don't have a lot of time and they get distracted really easily. And so being able to do that really quickly and concisely is among the most important skills. I think, and on top of that, I would say patience is also really important, because a lot of times things can move really quickly, but a lot of times they don't. Things can take a really long time, especially when it comes to starting your career. Most of the time that those roles are not going to be as fun and exciting. So patience in those experiences, as well as just there's plenty of long-term projects that I've been a part of that were really, really long-term, and it felt like we should be able to get this done faster. Like we should have been able to do this by now. And it just, things can always take a really long time. So just having that patience, and starting to understand that things can take a while, whether it's day to day working on the same document because someone had another comment, versus just, over the course of months, needing to come back to the same sort of thing. I think that's also that's really important, and to understand that to get things right, it frequently takes a lot of time.
That's great. Really good to hear. And Daria, you're just like teeing me up here because another great segue talked about having patience in roles right out of school, or like those initial entry level roles and things like that. I wanted to ask you both, how did you get your positions? Like, what were the stepping stones that you stepped on to get where you are today? And if you don't mind, I even want to go as far back as your undergrad, like what internships did you do? And then on to full-time employment.
So think I knew I wanted to do something in policy, and so I was looking when I was a senior at Vandy, looking at the world of local politics. I knew that I don't have the patience for federal politics where things are a little bit larger. The machine and the cog are larger, and so things, it's a little bit longer. And then something around local politics I really appreciated was the being able to see the impact a little like quicker, in the fact that I can see the impact with my neighbor, or I can see the impact in my community. Hence, party buses, like you can see the impact of what happens with that. But so in undergrad, as a senior at Vandy, I had looked out for policy internships and just happened across an education policy internship here at the chamber. And I wasn't sure if that was the world of policy I wanted to be in, but I tried it out. And what the chamber provided me was just though I was an education policy intern, the policy team here at the chamber is so small, we basically do everything. And so I got exposed to economic development, I got exposed to affordable housing, normal networking membership things when you think of traditional chamber, all those types at the state, federal, and the local level. And I've really enjoyed the access and the kind of interest of what was going on. And then I graduated Vandy and I took a year off. I wasn't sure what I was doing. I had applied to a Master's of International Relations program at NYU, gotten in, thought that was the way I wanted to go. Something felt weird and I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it. And so I deferred and I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna do it right now. I'm gonna think about this, and did some traveling during this year off. And kind of nearing that year, I was having to make the decision: do I go to get this master's, or do I look for a job? And just in the process of looking for a job, I had actually reached out to my boss as an intern and kind of just asked some questions, was like, are there any upcoming opportunities? Was it very interesting? I'm kind of flexible, and had to come across a policy coordinator position at the chamber that they had specifically put on, knowing that transit and infrastructure was going to be a huge push for the chamber starting in 2015. And so I got hired on there, had focused purely on transit as a coordinator. As I went up to manager, kind of got exposed to different things, and was honestly a little demanding is not the right word, but just I was pulling to be like, hey, I want to have access to this workforce policy issue. I want to know more about this affordable housing. Kind of pushed myself into a couple of different areas purely out of interest, and then just honestly kind of progressed there. And year after year just kind of kept pushing and kind of commanding over more topics, and building those relationships with business leaders, kind of developing that network. And then the opportunity came up where they needed a new Metro lobbyist. And over the year before that, I kind of knew I wanted that job. And so I was building those specific Metro relationships, learning how to read bills and interpreting bills, and figuring all of those tactical pieces out, and demonstrated them slowly over about a year and a half. And then was able to get promoted to this position.
Nice. That's awesome.
So I started going back to school. I did my first congressional internship the summer after my sophomore year in DC. I basically knew early on that I wanted to work in DC. I wanted to work on the Hill. I was open to doing other things and being on the Hill, but I figured I might as well start there. So I did my first internship here in DC summer after sophomore year, and then basically just kept doing internships when it was possible. So summer after my sophomore year, summer after junior year, and then in the fall after I graduated, and just a lot of internships. You don't have to do that many internships. In the end, I think I had 4 before getting my full-time job, which you don't have to do 4 to get a job on the Hill, just for the record. That's just how it worked out. Because I graduated in 2018, which was an election year. And there's not a great amount of hiring that happens in the fall of an election year on the Hill. So that's always part of the math. But I've done a bunch of internships and just was applying to every job on the Hill, like every staff assistant job, which is the entry-level job in a personal office or a committee, just applying to everything. And I ended up getting a job with House Committee on Veterans Affairs as a staff assistant. So that was my first full-time job on the Hill. So I did that. And I stayed with the Veterans Affairs Committee for a few years. Got promoted first to legislative assistant and then to professional staff member on that committee, specifically on the subcommittee on oversight and investigations, which is the type of work I do now. So basically just got promoted there. And then a few months ago, because I've only been at TNI since August, I was just kind of looking around, starting to talk to people about what I want to do next. And I found this job that I have now and applied to it, and I got it. And now here I am. Here, I will say it was remarkably straightforward to move from my previous job to my current job. I applied to a posting that was on the public House job board, Senate and House both have totally public job boards, and applied to it, interviewed. It took a few weeks, and then I got the job, which was remarkably simple for the Hill because frequently everything has a networking component. Definitely getting my first job, there was a lot of networking involved, for better and for worse. It really helps you learn a lot about different offices and different roles and what you want to do, and getting to learn from people about their experiences. But it can be a lot to always be networking, especially when you're looking for a job. But I think, the internships I did leading up to that first job were definitely among the most useful because it's a lot easier in an interview to talk about all the ways in which you're already doing the job that you're applying for. So that was definitely helpful. But yeah.
That's awesome. And I swear I'm not joking. My next question was, how important is networking in your field? So that's insane. I don't know if did I give you guys a question sheet? This is just natural happening. This is amazing. But so I think we both, Victoria, with you going to your, I forget if it was your supervisor or just your past boss at your internship, and then getting a position through that means. Daria, you talked about how important networking was and you navigating it. So I don't think I need to ask, is it important? I think it's been answered that it is important, but instead I want to flip the question a little bit and just say, what tips do you have for networking? What do you think is important when networking, or how students should go about it? Is there anything that stands out to you in that sense?
I think networking is hard, right? Where it is hard to just go up to a person and introduce yourself and kind of throw yourself into their face. I think my best experiences around networking are knowing that people love talking about themselves. People love it. And so what I found when I was dealing in the world of policy, especially in politics, people love talking about themselves and what they think is most important. So asking people questions about what they do, what their worlds are like, what is important for me, like their business or their district, and being able to kind of show an extreme interest, they will recuperate and show an interest in you. That I'm guilty of that as well, where having that kind of pathway created is helpful. So I say my best thing is always go in and ask, as appropriate, ask questions, show an interest in what they're doing. Not only are you going to gain information on them, you're going to help create, and you'll be able to glean off of, okay, this person really enjoys this or thinks that this is important. I can connect with that and hang on to that point and kind of bring that up. And then always, whenever you do go out or you do these networking events, or you are just in a regular setting and you're talking to people, always follow up, because I think that helps in my mind as I'm meeting people and I get a follow up from them. I'm like, oh yeah, that was Jennifer. I totally know. I remember her. And then that person will stick in your mind. And so then down the line, they come up again. You're like, oh yes. And there's been two touches at that point where you remember them. So it's, it's like going on a date. Focus on that other person, build that relationship with them, show that you're interested. They will show that they're interested in you, and always follow up with that person.
I definitely agree with that. I think also networking can feel very awkward, but it's important to remember that it's part of the culture in most political places, most political arenas. So you're not doing anything that's unprecedented or weird. Not to mention the fact that, I mean, I firmly believe that you can reach out to anyone, as long as you do it, as long as you're polite about it. You can reach out to anyone once or even twice. You might as well try. Some people respond to cold emails, some people don't. But if you're polite, if you're nice, if you're respectful, there's literally no harm in reaching out to anyone. I think one of the most important things I learned while I was networking, trying to get a job and all these things is that, yeah, people definitely love talking about themselves, but also when you're asking people for things, or when you are also trying to get something out of a relationship, you need to tell people what it is you want them to know about you. A lot of times it can feel very obvious that, like, oh, I'm a young person looking for a job. Obviously, this person knows that I'm looking for a job and would like their help. But in a lot of times, I mean, the way people like to talk about themselves, people think about themselves more than they're thinking about other people. They don't know what you want, what you want from them, what you would like, what you need, unless you tell them. And kind of goes back to the first thing: as long as you are nice, as long as you're respectful, you should share with people what it is you're looking for, what it is you want. Networking is totally part of the culture, and it's as awkward as it feels, it's very normal. So, and it's an important thing to take advantage of.
That's both fantastic advice and very reaffirming to me as a coach, because I say both of those things to students all the time. So love to hear that. Thank you for affirming my beliefs. And students, really hope you listen to that piece, because it really is just so crucial. The more I work in career services, the more I see networking being a driving factor in gaining employment. So definitely pay attention to that. And our next question. So this is a question I always hate when it's asked of me, so I apologize in advance. But what is the trajectory for your field? Or said in another way, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Let's see. Well, I've only been in this job technically since July. So I hope I'm here for the next couple of years and kind of growing in this space. But I think I'm currently getting an MBA right now. And so I'm really hoping that with policy, and then kind of with a little bit more of a business intelligence piece, I would really like to stay in the world of policy, but do it more from like a specific business perspective. So right now I'm kind of generally looking at the entire business community and a bunch of different topics. I think I would love to work in the space of policy for either a particular industry, for a particular business, and kind of build that. I would like to, again, harking on the benefits of networking. By now, even though I've only been in the field for, I would say, like 6 years or so, I have been able to build a really strong network of people in all industries and all businesses in all aspects of local government, that I want to kind of keep that up. So I do want to stay in the region, because that network is so strong and so good. But I think, yeah, I think I would want to continue this kind of growth. Maybe I don't think I can be a lobbyist forever, because it is a very the same with Daria was talking about, it's a big time commitment. It is a big, I was working on Saturday and Sunday because some of this special session around the state happening, and getting pulled into some of that. Like there's a lot of mandatory flexibility of your life. And so I think I want to eventually, when I need more consistency, go specifically work for a business in the area of policy?
So it's a very good question. I don't really know. Part of this is both a positive and a negative, but that the house is up every 2 years. So there's a lot of flexibility or just lack of certainty with that. So in a year and a half, who knows what the house is going to look like. So that can always change in office's perspective. But I mean, I think one of the things I really like about my kind of trajectory so far and the area generally is that there are a lot of different places I could go and a lot of different things I could do with the experience I have. So I could very well see myself in my exact same job in 5 years working on totally different issues. Maybe some of the same ones have come back around along with totally different issues in the T&I space, or I could be somewhere probably still related to policy, but totally different. So short answer, I don't really know, but there are a lot of different possibilities, and I'm confident that in terms of the things that I've worked on, will serve me well as I figure out what to do in the next 5 years.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate your honesty there, because I think I meet with a lot of students who are feel anxious about some of that uncertainty with the 5-year plan, and I try to encourage them that there's maybe one of the biggest skills once you become a professional is tolerating ambiguity and not uncertainty and different things like that, and recognizing that it's not always going to be just do this and then you do that and then you do that. That's not the case in most fields. And so I really do appreciate your honesty with that. And then moving forward, so for the last part here, I do have one question left to ask. It's my parting question, but before we get to that, wanted to open up to you students. If you have a question to ask, I ask that you just please do the raise your hand button and I can call on you. If you don't want to speak your question and just type in the chat box, you're welcome to do that. And if you don't have any questions, then I will just go forth and ask my final question. Yeah. So anyone? Hey, there we go. Yeah, Samia, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I couldn't find the raise hand button, but I'm Soumya. I'm a first year, and I think that I mentioned that because my question has to relate with it too. Currently intended sociology major, interested in doing something in public sector, but a little overwhelmed by the various different ways that can manifest. So I guess more broadly, thinking about ways to start or places to start looking. Seems like there's a lot of pressure to finalize internships and such, but also being a first year in a position of exploration. Just wondering any advice on that.
I would not panic first. I would say, I think in the world of policy, I feel like all of us go through that one traditional internship where we work for some elected official, whether it's a local from your home, and figuring out whether you like that space or not is kind of something that's helpful. I interned, I think, for a Texas state senator, and just figured out, do I like this world or do I not? And I found that I don't. I like being on one side of it than being deep in that. And then if you're also looking at, you said you're working in sociology and you're thinking about what's out there, look for a topic that really speaks to you. So think about, do you want to impact the world of education? Do you want to impact the world of healthcare? And almost coming at it from a nonprofit space is kind of an interesting way to do it. I've seen a lot of people where education, for example, they want to work in K through 12, whether it's policy or whether it's nonprofit work, getting into that nonprofit space because they are constantly looking for help exposes you to the policy that's involved in that topic. Because every single nonprofit I know that I work with constantly needs that kind of political acumen to be able to survive as a nonprofit and to work their issues. And so I think finding a specific topic of passion to begin with is a really good way to start, and then figuring out what piece of that, whether you do like the nonprofit space, whether you do like the public agency or the public agent space, or if you like the kind of the lobbying space around it. I think that can really help.
I would agree with that. I would also say that, especially if you're in your first year, to not worry about it at all and to consider just doing something fun that has nothing to do with like what job you want to get or your professional goals. I didn't do anything like productive summer after my freshman year, and I've never regretted it. It feels very important that you get started, on building your resume early on, and I totally feel that. But 4 years is a pretty long time, and you've got plenty of summers and a lot of time. So if there's no reason to be doing something, super professionally useful now. I mean, if there's just stuff you want to explore and you're not sure, I mean, that's definitely a great time to do that. But also just consider doing something fun that's just fun, because it gets a lot harder to take time for that later on. So, I mean, take advantage of that while you can. I did a Maymester like the summer after my freshman year and with a friend, just because it was not useful. I mean, it was fun and I learned things, but it wasn't professionally useful. And that was great. And I have wonderful memories, and it didn't negatively impact, I don't think, because, there were so many more summers, much more time left, especially being in Nashville, being able to do internships like during the school year part-time, especially later on, like senior year, that was really helpful. And that was something I really enjoyed and helped me build my resume later on when I started to get anxious about it towards the end. But especially this early, I mean, I think just do whatever looks interesting, looks fun.
Thank you.
Great question. And if I may add to their advice, schedule an appointment with your career coach. We can more than happy to talk to you about this stuff anytime. But their advice was spectacular and would definitely be reaffirmed if you schedule an appointment. So thank you for asking. Anyone else? Any questions? All quiet on the Western front. Okay, well, if that's the case, I'm going to ask my final question and we can get out of here. So it's really just pretty open-ended. What would be your parting advice? And if that's too general of a question, I like to ask, what was a great piece of advice that you received as a student, or what is a piece of advice you wish you would have received as a student?
Okay. I think one of the pieces of advice that I wish I had received was, and this also comes kind of in line with a question that I just got through the chat. You don't have to go into a field knowing a lot. Like not necessarily the fake it to make it, but you really don't have to go in feeling like you know what's going on or you know what's happening in the room. Being able to go into a space that you may not be comfortable with, going into a field that you may not be comfortable with, and having the level of confidence in yourself to just know that you don't know what's going on and asking questions constantly is probably the best piece of advice that I wish I was given as I was hitting the real world. So feeling that, don't let the fear of not knowing keep you from pushing forward. I think that too many people are so worried about not having the experience needed. And it's a lot of these jobs' faults, right? Where they're demanding a certain number of years of experience, when I know almost all of you know how to quickly learn things. And I think that is not given the credence that it should be given in the real world sometimes. But just, yes, knowing that you don't need to have all the knowledge in the room to be able to be a presence in the room. And I honestly, when I first got my first job as a coordinator at the chamber, I knew nothing about transit. I knew what a bus was. I knew that what kind of the general concepts were. I just quickly learned in that position and never was afraid to be like, hey, I don't know the answer. I will find an answer for you. And being able to be in that level of comfort.
I want to comment on that one real quick because that's fantastic advice. I've had appointments with students where there's that bulleted list of responsibilities for job or qualifications. And I'll have a student who meets 99% of that criteria and comes in and goes, should I not apply to this job because I don't have that one thing? And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, of course you should. And I always
never let that stop you from applying for those jobs, because I would say, like, even when we're looking at hiring people, we look at the person as a whole, and even if they don't have 5 years of experience in whatever this is, if you can see in their interview that they talk to you, they are a coherent human being, they have a level of confidence, and that you can tell when people can learn things quickly. That matters more than anything else.
Definitely. No, I completely agree with that. I'm always reminded, and I've referenced this in appointments with students before, but there's this one Humans of New York post that I really love, where it's a one sentence one. It's a picture of a guy on his phone in front of a building. I think he might have like a construction vest on. And the line is just, I'm Googling how to do the job I'm supposed to do in there, or something like that. And I'm like, honestly, that's a lot of what work is learning as you go. So thank you for sharing. And Daria, yeah.
I think that is definitely great advice. You definitely do not need to know everything when you start a new job. I mean, I went from working on even like moving after a few years. I didn't know anything about, I still know very little about transportation because I just started. And I definitely didn't know anything about Veterans Affairs when I started on that committee, but you learn, and people, and asking questions, especially at the beginning of a role, people are always happy to help you. So definitely not being afraid to ask questions. I think probably the advice that I feel like would be most important is just focusing on learning specific skills and certain specific things throughout your roles, because a lot of times everything you do, every extracurricular, every job, no matter if it seems super related or not super related to what you maybe want to do, especially in politics, there's always something you can take from it that would benefit you in a policy role. I mean, one of the most important responsibilities of an entry-level person on the Hill is picking up the phone and talking to angry people. And so people who have experience working in like customer service and like the food industry are great at that. You know, talking people down and just talking to people on the phone all day. That kind of customer service thing is really important, and it might not be the first thing that comes to mind when you're thinking about, oh, how can I, present my resume when I'm thinking about getting a job in the policy space. But when you focus on what are the actual things that I'm learning to do, what am I good at, and how do I build on those, everything you do is going to be related and it's going to help. So you don't have to build like the perfect, most beautiful looking resume, because you probably have a ton of the skills that people want, people need, just from regular jobs and extracurriculars and things, and to not let those things kind of stop you from going after more interesting and better jobs, just because you never know. And if you're, as Victoria said, if you're a person who can learn quickly, I mean, that is one of the most important things. And so kind of building on that skill of learning and just growing no matter what the job will help prepare you for any role, but especially in politics.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice as well. And just want to say thank you both so much for doing this. This was incredibly insightful. I know that I got a lot out of this personally. I hope you students did too. And students, if you join me in a virtual round of applause, feel free to take your camera off. If you want to do a real round of applause, thanks. Yeah, there we go. See, I'm starting to get the hang of the Zoom stuff. That's awesome. Yeah, this was just amazing. Really appreciate y'all taking the time to do this. And yeah, that's the end of our Vandy and Public Sector Alumni Panel. If anyone has any questions about anything, feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, thank you so much again.